One. Yeah, so welcome everybody to this presentation for Melody Place Farm Inc. I'm joined today by co-founders Lady T, Tina Ray, Malen Kassim, Chris O'Connell, who's the executive director, and we're really glad you could join us. A lot of people will be watching this in replay, so we're the guinea pigs, and there you go. If you have any questions at all, I'm sure you guys know where the chat box is. I'll just put a message in there. It should flash up on your screen. It's here. If you have any questions at all, ask away. I know Chris wants questions, and if there's anything that Belen has to answer, Tina Ray or me, we'll do our best to answer the questions. Um, and I'm also, as we go through it, I'm going to post a bunch of links to things that I think you might find helpful. And those same links will appear on YouTube in the description. So if you miss them today, they'll be there on YouTube later. All right. So first, I'm going to turn it over to you, Chris, and I'm going to share my screen, and you just can start at any time now.
Sure. Sounds good. Right. Well, appreciate everybody jumping on here today. So I know we have the hour. We probably won't use it all, so we'll get you guys out of here. But today we're talking about Melody Place Farm Incorporated, Farm One at least. And as Bruce mentioned, we have all of our principals on the call today, and myself, the executive director, Chris. You know, this is Farm One. This is in Ottawa, right outside Ottawa, Metcalfe. Actually, when I was recently up there, I came from downtown Ottawa, and it was about a 35-minute drive. So the beauty of Ottawa, you can be right downtown and then get right out to the country pretty quickly. So the farm itself has 27 acres, got very fertile soil, got a farmhouse, barn, workshop, and if you can believe it, it's actually got some riverfront too, because we're right on the Castro River. So a great mixed use that we have for you. And today we wanted to go through some of the objectives that we want to talk to you about today, and we'll see if it sparks any interest, and we can continue those conversations either obviously on the call here today or at a later date. So Bruce, if you want to flip the slide, yeah, to our objectives here. Obviously, objective one is raising awareness about Melody Place Farm. We're still new. This property came under our control in November, so we're really making a push for this summer to roll out a lot of these projects. But we have a lot of these projects on the go as well. The secondary main objective here is to raise some additional funding, people that can be investors in that today or sometime in the future. So we want to gauge the level of interest on that standpoint, and really increase the supply of affordable housing. That's the biggest thing here. So whether it be you have a tiny house that you might want to rent out or one day be a tiny house owner, we want to be able to help fill that gap here in the market because moving on to this next point, there's no doubt that there is a big demand for tiny homes. The biggest challenge today that we're seeing is just where the heck do you put these things? And that's really where our mindset kind of clicked, where, hey, let's be able to provide some type of platform that people can utilize this either for themselves or as a rental income property, more towards a medium to long-term basis. We don't want to have too much of the quick turnover Airbnb craziness here. We want more of a community here to come together. And one of the things that goes hand in hand with that is our matchmaking service. This is something that we launched on our site as well, where we want to try to find willing landowners that would be able to host tiny homes, either somebody's existing tiny home or some people that, again, we've seen a ton of demand for new home ownership. Not a question there, so we'll keep moving. And one of the other things that sort of hit us in the face here was obviously people want somewhere to live, but what we've seen across the board too is, well, people want a place for their side hustle, or they want to get out of that traditional corporate America, so they have either a side hustle or getting into the entrepreneurial side of things. And one of the offerings that we have is going to be workshops on the farm as well, so you can live, have a work environment, and then as a third, kind of wrapping everything around, is have an organic garden plot. So not only can you live, you can work, exactly where your food's coming from and you're growing it all in a small place that it's just, footsteps away, as opposed to driving in your car, fighting traffic and going through all that. So some of the things that we're going to be going through today also are tiny home builders that we actually have. We vetted out, these are Canadian manufacturers. They're built for the winter. They're
Hmm.
really strong. They're solid, true homes, really. These aren't mobile homes that I think sometimes they can get labeled with. And we'll go through some of that, and we'll be showcasing some of the existing homes we actually have at location now, or will be coming here in the spring. So our overall idea here is, Mellow Place Farm isn't going to necessarily get into every aspect of the businesses that might be able to come on the farm. But it's to be a platform for other entrepreneurs to actually have success. So we're going to be detailing one of the specific businesses that are coming on the farm that, we're not actually going to run it all, but they're going to be creating a business on top of the farm. So it really is this platform idea that we can create this community of different entrepreneurs that ideally can have some success, lower their ecological footprint, and ideally not run through as much stressful financial situations that I'm sure we've all experienced here in the past. We can keep going, Bruce. And I think, Bruce, you wanted to
Yeah,
talk a little
I'm,
bit
I'm going
more
to
here
talk
about
about
this.
this. So, this is the kind of the bad news, good news side of things. I think Ontario is in a recession now. I checked early this morning. Ontario's unemployment rate is around 7.4%. The United States, where Chris is about 4%. So Ontario's unemployment rate is about double, not quite double the U.S. rate. And real estate definitely, in my opinion, is in a recession right across Ontario. I think I read 41% condo sales. Shelley, you'll be interested in this. Shell, 41% down year over year sales of condos in Toronto. And when sales are down that much, prices are going to drop. So that's the bad news. I think we're in a recession and it could get tougher. We may end up in a trade war with our largest trading partner, which is the United States, and that will affect Canada, obviously. So that is the bad news. The good news, I think, for Melody Place Farm Inc. Is that we have positioned ourselves to actually be more successful in a recession because, in Ottawa, where I live, a townhouse in the west end of Ottawa in Canada, for example, is about $700,000. You can't buy a house really for much less than that. And you can buy a tiny house for 100,000 or two beautiful homes for $200,000, and still that's a lot of money, but it's not $700,000. So I think Melody Place Farm Inc. is well positioned with tiny homes. The other thing is that I think we're also well positioned for workshops because if you lose your job, I mean, you can sit at home and cry, maybe for a day, but then you have to pick yourself up and say, what do I do next? And I think you rent an inexpensive workshop and start some kind of a business. And a lot of people are doing that and have been doing it during COVID and ever since because as Chris said, escaping the corporate rat race is something to be desired. And something else that I put on here, I'm going to put it in the chat box. You can read it if you want to. My oldest son, Andrew, is a very senior economist in the national government in Australia. He lives in Canberra with his family. And he told me that things like your garden plot and some of the other, homemaker, quote unquote, homemaker chores have 1,000% ROI. Now, when somebody tells you, you can get 1,000% ROI, you got to take that with a grain of salt. So I challenged him, but we actually wrote an article together called Mr. 1,000% ROI. And he is right. You can get incredible returns by doing some of these things yourself. So I think, Chris, in terms of where we are, in terms of, I don't want to ever say recession proofing yourself, but in terms of being recession resistant, I think we're in the right space. And here I think Elvia is on the call here. Elvia is based in Toronto, and she came up with this new workshop design, which you can sort of see in the middle of the slide. I bought a number of these workshops. I rented out many of them. I get them from the North Country sheds, but none of my workshops look as pretty as these. And so these are the sort of the new era workshops. They're very, very pretty. They're only 160 or 161 square feet, so they're small, but they're very useful. They're heated, they're cooled. You can use them year round. And so I really like the work that she's done. I can't take any credit for that at all. And so the idea of having a tiny house, a workshop, and a garden is a good one. And I actually put a little case study on the screen here just to give people a flavor for what's going on. The very first tiny home owner that I came in contact with was owned by, and you can see it on the screen here, it's called Big Bertha, was owned by George and Brette. And George said he had a tiny home that he and his wife Brette had built themselves, and could they park it on one of my sites? And I said, "Oh, sure, why not?" And they pay, I think, $600 or $650 a month for the privilege of parking it there. Um, and when it showed up, this thing is 54 feet long. It's the size of a rail car. I said, George, that's not a tiny home. That's humongous. And I should have charged you more, but he laughed, and there you go. But they each have a workshop. Brett does jewelry. George does woodworking, and they have regular jobs as well. And their cost of living with no debt is $650 a month. And it was from George and Brett, Chris, that I learned the slogan for the tiny house movement: less house, more life. And to be honest with you, I really like it. Tina Ray and I had spent some time together, I guess, in the last couple of weeks. And it's a slogan I really endorse: simpler life, lower cost. This is more work by Elvia. Look at the kinds of workshops we're talking about here, where you could do carpentry, you could have a little shop, you could have some office space, quite a nice office, I think. And then you could have all kinds of services, massage therapy, physiotherapy, pet grooming, which is, I think, something that we'll talk about a little later, maybe an artisan studio. So I really like this concept of combining tiny house living, workshops, and garden plots with maybe some other things. And I wanted to show you one of the other things that we've been talking about. I'm going to turn it back to you, Chris, and maybe Milen too wants to chip in here. And Chris and I, Milen and Tina Ray, we all look at the farm as a platform for other people to come and build their dreams on. So put your tiny house there, you get yourself a workshop, you get yourself an organic garden. But you might also want to run a different kind of business. And one of the businesses that I kind of have fallen in love with is the idea of having a private dog park. I coach some people who have them, one in Markham, outside of Toronto, and one in North Vancouver. They're very successful. And so we came up with this new idea of having a dog park there, but it's not the farm that's going to be running it. It'll be the entrepreneurs who run it, and the farm gets a little bit of revenue, but the people who run it presumably will run it well and will make a success of it. So we're going to call it PawGround. That's a new brand that we came up with, PawGround instead of playground, PawGround.ca, with a tagline: where tails wag the dog. And this morning, Milen, you'll like this, Milen. This morning, there's a lady in Smith Falls who's working with Elvia and myself to build a dog park there, perhaps. And she said, you can see the quote here. It's not my quote, it's hers. Her first name is Bailey. A dog park has remained on a short list of places where normal is having brief interpersonal conversations with other humans without technology. You know what Match.com is and Tinder is and all these, matchmaking services that are online. Well, they're probably pretty useful, but you can actually have a dog and you can go to a dog park, and somebody like me who likes people can go up to people I don't know and say hello and get into a conversation. And I just loved that idea that a dog park could be a place where people must love dogs and each other. Anyway, back to you, Chris.
No, I think you nailed it, Bruce. I mean, it's just this is going to be a perfect example of a company coming on top of the farm and utilizing it as their own separate business to run. And our idea here is to get a dog park that's private, so it's not just going to be a fenced-in area. Well, maybe one day we'll get to the pool, but we got the river right there. We'll have playground, so to speak, a private area for training, a private area for smaller dogs, some indoor training as well, maybe a little bit of boarding on the side. And again, use the farm to be able to create on top of it. Again, ideally get out of the rat race. That's the goal here.
Yeah, and I'll bet you we end up with 20 or 30 of these across Canada, the United States, Chris, by the time you and Milan and other people have finished with it, and Elvia too. All right. So Jessica's on the call with us today as well, just in parody. She has done marvelous marketing for her Bluebell Cottage. This is a small, tiny home. It's about 180 square feet, including the loft. It looks very, very, very small, but she has something called My Bluebell Cottage, and she and her husband Dustin have put it up for sale. So if anybody's interested in buying a tiny home, this one is available. And what's really interesting about it, on the next slide, you'll start to see some of the interior. And while it's very small, it's actually really quite livable. And I'm going to actually show you a short video. I'm going to get there of what it's like to live in one of these things. And of all the people who've owned the Vanguard model, which was built by Hammond Hill or Small Living Company, I think Jessica has done by far the best marketing job, and she's done a very nice job on the interior. What's interesting about what Jessica and Dustin are proposing, which you'll see on the next slide, is they're proposing to bring it to the farm, build a deck, hook it up to all utilities, and sell it for $149,500. So you can see that price on here. And that is actually a pretty good price because I don't have to tell most of the people, certainly Melinda as a project manager, what it costs to hook up these things to well and to septic. So you got water, you got electricity, you've got septic, and whatever else you need. And by the time you set up a site and you build a deck and you put it on the site, one thing about tiny homes that I have learned, and Shell, you might be interested in this too, is that they're not RVs, which is both good and bad. They're not RVs in the sense that they're good down to -40. You can live in them all year round. That's great. But they're not easy to move. They are not. They weigh 20. This model here, the Vanguard, weighs 21,000 pounds. And some of the bigger ones you're going to see probably are 25 or 26,000 pounds. So they're very, sluggish. And you can move them, but I wouldn't move them very often. And what I have recommended to people that I know who own these is that they put them in place. And if they ever decide to move, just sell them with a long-term land lease. Hopefully you make a little bit of money when you do that and buy another one, but don't really move them. They're not that easy to move. And I will be putting in the chat box as well, contact information for Jessica and Dustin, so you can reach out to them directly. If you want to buy this and have it at the farm, you can do that. Here's another one, identical unit. It's owned by John Connolly, and you'll notice it's a little bit cheaper. It's $125,000, but it is in Rockland, and it's mobile. You come and you take it and you do whatever you want with it, right? So it doesn't include, building a deck and hooking it up to services and all that. But I'll also post John's contact information. He's a wonderful young man. I've known him for years. And if you're interested in buying that one, I'll put, like, you can see his contact information on here, but I will put all of this in the chat box so you can see it and grab it for yourself. So there you go. Now, I promised you I would show you it's kind of a 1.5 minute video. So I rented this one. This is a Vanguard unit that my wife and I own, and it's on our property. I rented to a young man, his name is Chris, and he showed up one day in his car, and I've known him since he was a teenager. He showed up in his car with 3 green garbage bags full of clothing and his computer and said, "Hey, Bruce, how you doing? I'm renting this place." And I said, "Chris, we haven't even finished, installing it and hooking it up. It's still under construction. It's kind of a mess inside. It doesn't matter. I'm renting it." So he did. And then he gave me this very nice testimonial. I won't read the whole thing. But I'll start it anyway. There are many layers to the sentiment of less house, more life, but the one that strikes closest to home is that it amounts not to a trade-off, but a trade-up. You trade away the things you thought made a home, stuff that takes up space, but maybe doesn't really contribute much to your quality of life. In exchange, you fill that space with exactly what you need to make your tiny place a tiny home. So he's really embraced it. So anyway, he did this video, and he actually staged it. So when you see his computer and how he set it up, you'll actually see the outside of the Vanguard unit on his computer screen. So, but he doesn't say anything. It's just quiet. So there's the TV and clothes hanging. Yeah, a little kitchen, 2 burners, I think. And this is a table that is a desk that turns into a bed that turns back into a desk. There's a microwave and a fridge. My wife put in some nice blinds there. And you'll see on his computer, he stages there. You can see the Vanguard on his screen. And then he's just, oh, I guess he's going to show us the bathroom here. It's a pretty good size. That is a composting toilet. It's called a Cinderella toilet. And it's called a Cinderella toilet not because it's fit for a princess, but because it turns poop into cinders. And pretty good size shower. And now Chris is going to take us, I think, upstairs. Yeah. And he takes us up to his loft. So you could in fact sleep somebody on the ground floor and somebody upstairs, but he's living there by himself. So this is his bedroom now, and this is the loft. He's got a few cubbies down the bottom there for extra storage, and I think he's got a night table and a lamp somewhere, all equipped with the internet. He's a tech guy, so he needs good internet, so he does have that. And then you get to see a little bit more of the space here. It's got a sort of a shed ceiling, so it does have a bit of a cathedral effect to it, which I think is great. So I know it's a very small space, but he seems to really like it. And other people who are using them for 6 months, a year, sometimes 2 years, seem to like it too. Now, this is something, Melen, do you feel like, do you want to talk to these next three slides? Do you feel okay to do that?
I'm in the process of buying this tiny home. It was previously owned or is currently owned by a 6'2" woman who lives in this tiny home, and she lived in it. She's lived in it for about a year. And Chris, you had raised the issue of, people want a tiny home but have nowhere to put it. She loved this but had to move from where she had it because she just had a falling out with the owner of the land. But this is the setup that she's had. Right now it's in her backyard, and I'm planning to bring it over to the farm probably in the spring because right now it's just absolutely snowed in. It's actually quite roomy inside. I find that it's really sun-filled. It's got 13 feet high ceiling, and the deck, which will be reconstructed, is 12 by 16. So a really good size deck. Can you switch the next slide, please, Bruce? There's a full bathroom. There's a nice sitting area. There's a electric fireplace and a TV mount. And what I also like about it is a full-size fridge, and then stove, microwave, and a nice-size kitchen counter. Can you move to the next one, please?
Just before I do it, am I right? I think this is a really clever design. You go up these cubby stairs, and I think you can almost stand upright here.
Yeah. I did actually take a photo of myself, but I couldn't quite stand up on the top shelf. Okay. But the next step down, I was standing fully.
Yeah, I think that's really clever.
Yes, it is. It's very nice. And if you notice also, I don't know, in the lower photo, you can see that area is opened up so that the light coming in will also come into the living room.
I think these windows down here, I don't know if you can see my cursor moving around on the bottom here, but I think those are called clerestory windows, and architects love them. It does allow a lot more light. So when you put sun-filled in your description, I liked it. Okay, here's your last slide.
And the last slide, well, that shows the high clearance going up to the bed. There's a screen for a bit of privacy, the fireplace, and it does fit a queen size bed up there. Wow. What's not pictured is a little end table that's just at the end on the side of the bed.
Well, that's really great. And so I'm going to put, as I said, I'm going to put all these links in the chat box so you'll be able to reach out directly to Melen if you'd like to rent something. Rent a tiny house and try it out. Okay, Shelley, I don't know if you feel, Shelley, if you don't mind talking to this slide and explain what you're doing here.
So this is the Noble by Humble Creek Homes. Some people may have already heard of them before. I like them because they're a little bigger. And they're beautiful inside. You can see some of the interior pictures here. So there's sleep space on the bottom, as well as there is a loft area as well if if you wanted to use that as storage or second spot. So this one we currently have listed on the MLS for 225K. If anyone's interested, give me a call, and I can get you some more info.
Yeah, 613-227-5185. I think that's your cell number, right?
That's correct. Thanks so much, Bruce.
And everybody calls Shelley Shell. So there you go. It's not Shelley, it's Shell. Okay. And I just wanted to give everybody a flavor of what it's like to actually do these things. Remember how I said it wasn't that easy to move these things? It really isn't. So maneuvering these into place, hooking them up to your well and septic and electricity, it's quite the chore. And this is a wonderful couple. Ron here, if you can see my cursor moving around, that's Ron Murray and his wife, Michelle. And this is a gentleman who helped build the deck and the three-season cabin. So a lot of people, are thinking when you put this together, what they wanted, what Ron and Michelle wanted, because this is on my site, what they wanted was they wanted a long-term land lease so they don't run into the problem, Belinda, that you were talking about, where you get into a dispute with your landlord and he kicks you out or she kicks you out, right? So a 60-month land lease is what they have. And they're actually thinking of buying, Shell, a bigger one. This one is 35 feet long. I think they're looking at the next one up, which is 40 feet long. And they might sell this, but they'll sell it in place. And I just wanted to share with you the kind of thinking that goes on. This is their principal residence. They have no debt against it, right? Their cost of living, again, is $600 or $650 a month. That's it. And they really, really like me, and they really like the space, and it's mutual admiration for sure. But here's the cool thing. It cost them about $200,000 to $225,000 to buy this thing, and it cost about another $35,000 to build the deck and the three-season sunroom, and about $15,000 more to hook it up to all the services. So they're in for about $260,000, I think, total. But we're going to see, and Shelley, I'm coming back to you on this. We're going to see if we can prove this. We don't know if it's true, but I think it is. I think these assets will appreciate, unlike RVs. You can buy RVs for 190,000 US dollars, beautiful ones, but they depreciate. You drive them off the lot, they're just like a car. They lose 30% crossing the line. And we think that tiny homes will last at least 40 years. They're livable in 4 seasons. We think they will appreciate. So what we're thinking about doing, Shell, is listing Ron and Michelle's tiny home Insight with the land lease for $335,000. So we're hoping they can make about $70,000, and that would be, in Canada, that would be tax-free because your principal residence isn't taxed. So we haven't proven it yet, but we do think these things appreciate. And then just for fun, I put a photograph of Michelle. We like naming things. I like naming things. So her house is called Tadpole House because there's a pond nearby. They have a shed there, and they're pretty comfortable there, and they want to stay there, but they might get something even bigger. Here's the Noble that Shelley has for sale. And you can see the floor plan. It's got a bedroom here, kind of an ensuite bathroom here, kitchen here, washer, dryer, fridge, some storage here, fold-out table, kitchen. I already said that, I guess. This is kind of the living area, work area. Then they've got patio doors so you can go right out to your deck. And then there's a loft where you could have a queen-size bed or a double and a single. So these things could sleep, I think, 4 or 5 people. But if it was me, I would be, at my age, I'd be on the ground floor, and my grandkids would be in the loft. All right, so that's kind of a typical floor plan. Some of the more recent floor plans that Chris and I have looked at, and others, show the bathroom at one end and the bedroom, I think, at the other end. Just they did separate them out. So there's some changes that are happening in floor plans. But I like this one, and I also like the new designs. We found another purveyor, I guess, of tiny homes, Mitch and Doris Lacoste. They own something called MMRH.ca. And I think, Melinda, that's who you're buying. Are you buying that tiny home from them or not?
No, it was built by them. I'm
Was built
buying
by
it
them.
from a private, somebody who bought it from them.
Right, right. But anyway, I think we all really, really like Mitch. Mitch is a working man. He builds this with two or three assistants, and he does a beautiful job. And the one that you see on the screen here is humongous. 10 feet wide, 13 feet high, and 40 feet long. So again, you're not moving it very often. Elvia, are you on the call?
Yes, I am, Bruce.
Elvia, I'm picking on you now. Do you want to just talk a little bit about what you're doing in Smith Falls?
Sure. In Smith Falls, we recently purchased a property about 6.5 acres. So you can see the site on the bottom right corner. Currently, we're developing it for a wide variety of purposes, a combination of outdoor storage, indoor storage, some workshops, and also we have the zoning to have one tiny home on the property. Bruce suggested that, hey, let's put an ad out and see if there's someone who's interested in living on the property on a tiny home. And once we posted that ad, we had over 1,000 views in just a couple weeks and over 30 inquiries and 2 serious interests in visiting the site to have a look at it. Once the snow melts and weather permitting, we'll start installing some of the infrastructure such as water, septic, and lighting and security, which is all planned to start in the spring. So this lucky individual who gets to live on the site will have a lot of open space all to themselves. We don't have the zoning to put any more than one. And it might be a phase 2 or phase 3 project, which will take a while, I think, if we want to add additional tiny homes on the property. So it's going to be, we're looking to sell the Noble, which, Shell did a great job in advertising earlier on what that entails. So it would be a brand new one. And the lease terms would be $650 a month with utilities.
Yeah, so the movement is spreading, and thank you very much, Elvia. Sorry to put you on the spot there. All right, back to you, Chris.
So, getting back to the mission of the farm here is we're building self-supporting communities that combine tiny houses, starter home living with organic garden plots, 3-season bunkies, and workshops to enable people to further their dreams, lower their costs, and build side hustle personal businesses for life that will help support them and their families for multiple generations here. Our communities settle gently on the land, giving people room to breathe while preserving and enhancing the environment. I mean, that's really what we want, as low footprint on the land as possible. And Bruce, if you go to the next slide here, we can.
Just before we do that, I think we had
sure.
a question from sorry, excuse me, I screwed up there. I think we had a question from Lori and Lynn. Are there any options for tiny home rentals on the farm? Yes, the one that Milan presented will be available for rent sometime in late spring. I think that's correct, right, Milan? So Lori and Lynn, now it's a smaller home. It's not the size of the Noble. It's certainly not the size of Mitch Lacoste, 40-foot long. I don't even want to call it a tiny home when it's 40 feet. I mean, it's humongous. But anyway, so Milan will have one for rent, yes. And Lori and Lynn, I will put Milan's contact information in the chat box with everything else. So the other question that Lori and Lynn are asking, would that be the only one available for rent? I am trying to convince more people to come to the farm and put their tiny homes up for rent. But so far, the only volunteer really, we have 2. Luke St. Pierre, who has rented his, which is also Vanguard, and Milan, which she will be renting her. So right now, only 2, Lori and Lynn. So we haven't found anybody else yet to do that.
Hey, Bruce, important point to bring up too. When we were talking about the Noble units and some of those units, I mean, those can also be financed. So, it's one of those things where it's not necessarily rentable today. I mean, it's, you could always do that. It's a pretty reasonable finance cost. You actually get a manufacturer rebate back for that as well. So it's one of those that you can live in there for a little while, then you yourself could even rent it out or or have a combination of things. But there is that flexibility to it as well.
Yeah, I think I financed a couple of the tiny homes that I bought, one with the Royal Bank, one with the Bank of Nova Scotia. And I used a mortgage broker by the name of Colin Toker, who was fantastic. To do financing today with banks is difficult. And Shell, you probably use a lot of mortgage brokers, right? Or have relations with mortgage brokers. Am I right about that?
Yes, I have spoken with Colin, and he seems like the most knowledgeable one to figure out financing. So I would encourage anyone to connect with Colin if they're interested in that.
Yeah, and you can reach out to Shell anytime. As I said, I'll put all these links in the chat box before we end, and you can reach out to Shell, and she can connect you to Colin. All right, now
Absolutely.
you wanted to talk about this, Chris?
Yeah, just really the opportunity that we see in front of us. The organic market in Canada over 8 billion right now. Agritourism projected this year is going to be up 20%. And I know I see it down here in like a city of like Miami. In the US here, they put a lot more crap in our food, it seems. But the one thing that people are demanding more, especially if they go to restaurants or some of these mid-market fast foods, is where are you sourcing your food? Like, where are you getting this from? Is it organic? Is it fresh? And we see that, hey, you can take all that variability out of it by doing it yourself. You know exactly where it's coming from. And I mean, the big thing, every time I see the number, it's crazy to think in December 2024, the average home price in Ottawa is over $650,000. I mean, yeah, that's hard for a lot of people to even get into. So, we see that market opening up, and local consumers to Ottawa's who we're going after, the eco-conscious tourists and first-time and starter home buyers who again want to live more life and less house poorness, if you will, like we see quite often. Yeah, and some of the revenue streams, I mean, most of these are really up and running now, but you don't want to say totally sky's the limit here, but from tiny homes to micro suites to the farmhouse, the garden plots, all the way down to the wedding photo sites. There's two churches in the area, probably 3 minutes away, if that. And with 27 acres, we can really get creative with it. And we have different people come to the farm and give us ideas all the time, like, wow, we've never even thought about that. And we welcome all those types of different opportunities, but there are a lot of different ways we can get to revenue here. And Bruce, I think one of those slides might be coming up to kind of walk everybody through it. And I know everybody's first glance goes down to the cap rate at 21.7, and everybody understands you start talking north of 14-15% cap rate, you do need to take a bit of a grain of salt with that. But if you look at where the revenue streams are coming from, half of these are up and running today, if not, getting pre-orders in, where the farmhouse is already rented out. The barn dominium is going to be a good project, but you're talking, maybe 15 plus workshops that we could get in there. We have micro suites. We got the ACO trailers going today. We got the tiny homes. The dog park is coming in the spring. There'll be some kennel and boarding with that. The micro gardens are coming in the spring. We have some pre-orders for that. We have some pre-orders for parking, and of course, a flea market type workshop environment. So, realistically, we think 350 is realistic for revenue. We always plan for about 34% for cost for operating expenses, leaves you with 230 of net operating income. When you look at it, I mean, we really do think 15 plus is realistic because you can just keep adding different streams to it.
Yeah, and if you look at, for example, the private dog park, that's not a lot of revenue from, say, 1 acre of land. $15,000 doesn't seem like a lot. But if you rented that out just for cash cropping, you'd probably get about $100 for the season from a cash crop farmer, something like that. It's about $100 an acre. So the last time I checked, Chris, $15,000 in rent from a private dog park is better than $100. So
Yeah,
I think
just
what
about.
we're doing, what Milan and Tina Ray and Chris and I and others are doing with the farm is quite unique almost. And that $15,000 is the land rent that the farm gets. But if the private dog park is even close to being as successful as the Markham one that I'm familiar with, which grosses $300,000 a year in total revenues, or the one in North Vancouver, which is over $200,000, you can see that idea that we've been talking about consistently, that the farm is a platform for other people or individuals to have success. Maybe you're paying $15,000 in rent for 1 acre, but if you can make 150,000 gross, or maybe 200,000, or if it's like market 300,000, then the individual can make real serious money and get out of the corporate rat race. So this gives you an idea of what the farm looks like. And what Milan and Tina Ray and Chris and I decided at our last board meeting is we'd like to expand this to other parts of Ottawa, other parts of Canada, and into the United States as well. This is, as Chris started off, this is Farm One.
Right. So we're asked here, we have a valuation around 1.5. We actually have a future appraisal for that number. So our goal here is to raise $300,000 in an equity raise. So that would equal out to about 15,500 for 1% stake in the company on a preferred share basis. And I think, Bruce, on the next slide, it's as far as how the funds would be used here, we are going to have those 4 tiny home pads that are going to need to get up and running. So we'd like to actually add a second well. There's already well and septic on there, but just from a positioning standpoint, we probably want to build another well in there. We're going to get the garden plots up and running. There's a garage on there that needs some renovation for additional workshops, and phase 1 for the barn would be part of this project. And then, of course, with inflation and raising costs with everything, we always want to build in some contingencies. But that's really the use right now that we want for the funds. And as I mentioned, I think, Bruce, on the next slide here, it doesn't necessarily have to be just a investment. Hey, I want to be an investor on this. We're going to send this in the chat box too, but whether you want to be a volunteer just on the farm in one aspect of it, do you want to be a patron on the farm or part of the business, an officer of the company, maybe a resident, whether that be owner or rental, whichever one. Do you want a workshop? You could do that. We could do a micro garden for you, a 3-season bunkie. Maybe you need a place to park your RV or boat. We have some room there. If you wanted to be a part of the dog park, or just maybe bring your dog, or something we're not thinking about, obviously you can check the box there. And if you do want to become a shareholder here, you can put what you feel comfortable with, and any other types of donations. And yeah, I know there is some dog parks in the area, but if you really look at them, I mean, they're very basic. Most of them in Metcalfe have absolutely no fencing at all, so it's just free roam. And I know, one of the most popular places is Bruce Pit in the Ottawa area. But same thing. I mean, you probably go there, you're going to see a dog tussle at least every hour there. So, I mean, this is going to be a lot different from, hey, you're going to have your own private area if you don't want to get into the mix with other dogs. You're going to have like a jungle gym. It's all going to be fenced in. There's going to be things for humans to eat and consume. And it's just going to be a lot different feel than probably what you see on a traditional sniff spot, if you will.
And I actually think that it's Paul. Oops, sorry. I was just trying to put the links in here and it wouldn't let me do it. It's too long. Sorry, I apologize. But I think the one that you're looking at. See if I've got it now. The one that you're looking at, Lori and Lynn, is actually on the farm. I think that's the one that is on Sniff Spot that our tenant actually put up there, Chris.
Yes,
that could be the
right.
one that Lori and Lynn are looking at. So that's actually on the farm, like our tenant in the farmhouse, a nice woman with her family. Her first name is Alex. She would like to be involved, helping Milan and Chris with the dog park. But even so, I agree with you, Chris. I've always liked competition. I think competition makes you a little bit sharper. You have to be a little different. You have to be a little better. And I think competition makes you better. If you think about sports, if your best friend is a little faster than you in the 100-meter, you gotta work at it, right? So you could beat him next year. So I do actually like competition, but I think that the one that you actually saw, Lori, was was one of ours. So I did put in the chat box some of the links. I didn't get them all in there. So there is so there's the Melody Place Farm link, my Bluebell Cottage, that would be Jessica Parody. Then you've got the Minimalist Cottage for sale by John Connolly. So his links are in there. And then I'll have to see if I can get the rest of them in there for you. And I am going to put in as well, assuming, yes, I think I got them all in there. So if you copy them out of the chat box, if you're interested. The cool thing about it is if you did want to, rent a tiny house, or you did want to own a tiny house, or you wanted a garden plot or a workshop, what Chris and Milan and Tina Ray and I are doing is you also have a chance to be a part owner. And I mean, buying a tiny house might be $100,000 or $200,000 or whatever. But buying a 1% interest in a company that I think one day might be worth quite a bit of money is $15,500. So you could, rent a workshop, rent a tiny house, whatever, buy a tiny house and be a part owner. And I think that's pretty cool. And I don't know, Chris, if there's, and Melinda, Tina Ray, if there's an awful lot of, of opportunities like this where you can be a tenant and an owner. And I've always liked that idea. So that's one of the things we wanted to do today, to give everybody that chance. So we've heard from Milan and we've heard from Chris, but another founder who I have a lot of respect for, Tina Ray, you haven't said anything, and I'd like to hear from you if that's okay. You have to unmute yourself. I think Tina Ray. Okay.
Okay, got it. Sorry, I'm on my phone. My computer's got some technical difficulties today. Yeah, welcome everyone for being on the call. I'm so excited about this project and the people that I get to work with here. I think we have a very practical solution for not only forward thinking when it comes to our communities, but how we can create more connection with each other in the earth that we live on, because we are social creatures and we're depleting the earth of its resources. So what we're about is bringing practical solutions that include connection with others and the things that we really come to value, and keeping our footprint on the world a small one, something that's regenerative and we can repeat in other places. So yeah,
I love that term, regenerative. Say it again, Tina Ray.
Regenerative.
Regenerative, and I think it was either you or Milan who first clued me in that that's not the same as sustainable. And sustainable, everybody uses, sustainability. And I thought about it once the two ladies had introduced me to this concept, and I really like what where they're going. Really, nothing is very sustainable. Sustainability implies, no progress. I don't know, the status quo. Regenerative is, I think, a better term in the sense that you're constantly regenerating the environment, regenerating opportunity, regenerating ideas. I mean, I think it's a better word to use to describe what we're trying to achieve here than sustainable, because I don't really know that anything is sustainable. Milan, you probably do a better job explaining it than I just did.
No, I actually saw that on a friend's website who's very much into permaculture, food forests, and we're very interested in that as well. I'm still trying to connect with her. She jets around between Costa Rica, Toronto, and everywhere else. But she said sustainability will eventually run out. You can't be sustainable forever. However, if you regenerate, that's where you guarantee the longevity and the continuation of your project, of your living style and whatnot. I really, really liked it.
I like it, and I'll try and do a better job understanding the concept. I mean, I understand it, I just don't explain it very well. Listen, before we leave today, and I think we did pretty well, Chris, 52 minutes. Again, everybody will get a copy of this YouTube video unlisted. Don't post it anywhere. Don't share it. Just use it as you need it. Is there anybody else who would like to ask a question? Laura, you asked a few. Thank you. Alex, you mentioned Sniff Spot. Yes, we're very familiar with Sniff Spot. Is there anybody else who would like to ask a question? We've got Jessica here, Jessica Parody here, and Elvia's here, and the rest of us are here. If there's any other questions, this is the time. You can unmute yourself, or you can just put it in the chat box, whatever you think is best. And this is where I'm met with a thundering ovation, right? Silence. But no, don't.
Hey, Bruce, can I ask a question?
Oh, absolutely, Elizabeth. Thank you.
Wonderful presentation. I do like the word regenerative. Also, question regarding the investment vehicle. And there's a talk about replicating this as a model.
Yeah.
Is the investment, are there multiple options for investment, in the sense there's one about investing in this particular farm location, but I'm assuming there's a higher up corporation responsible looking at the repeatability of that model. So if you're investing in this farm,
that's a great
do you have
question.
the opportunity to get on board in the repeatability of it?
I think that's a great question, and I think I should defer to our executive director on this question, but I think that you're investing in the parent corporation. I think Melody Place Farm Inc. is in fact the parent corporation, and it will make additional investments. The nice thing about the farm is it has, Elizabeth, it has AG3 zoning, agricultural zone, class 3 zoning, which is actually a very good zoning. It's actually better than rural zoning. It's better than any kind of residential or commercial zoning because it allows things like 4 mobile tiny homes. It allows things like workshops. It allows things like garden plots and all of these cool things. It's all, and Elizabeth, are you based in Ottawa?
Currently in Montreal.
Oh, currently in Montreal, but you might have heard of, for example, Saunders Farm. Do you know Saunders Farm?
Unfortunately not, no.
Okay. Well, Saunders Farm was a failing strawberry farm 35, 40 years ago when Bill and Ann Saunders were operating it as a pick-your-own strawberry farm. And unfortunately, what they found is that the first few years were great, and then people thought, it's hot, it's humid, I have to bend over and pick strawberries, whereas I can just go to Costco or back then probably Price Club and get as many strawberries as I want for $1, right? So they came to see me, Bill and Ann came to see me and said, our strawberry farm, we're in trouble, what should I do? And I talked to them about something called agritainment. And agritainment is adding sort of some kind of entertainment uses to farmland. And it was a very big thing in the United States because farms, they're always looking for additional income. So farm stays, mobile homes, tiny homes, the kinds of things we're talking about here. And so Bill and Ann Saunders the next summer went on a tour of farms in Pennsylvania. They saw all these, incredible summer camps were going on. The weddings were happening, farms became, multiple, almost like an industry in some ways. And Saunders Farm has been now an intergenerational success. So the agricultural zoning we have discovered in many parts of Canada and the United States, not all parts, but many parts, is actually the right zoning for this. So if you were interested in investing in the company, you should reach out to Chris O'Connell. I put his contact information in the chat box. We'd welcome you, and you're involved with the parent company, and hopefully one day we will be talking about 30 farms in Canada and the United States, and a company that's worth, quite a bit of money.
Thank you. If I can ask a second question, and I think it triggered on Milen's statement in terms of the tiny home she's acquiring because the woman had an argument with the landlord. There's one about building tiny societies. Is what do you see the responsibility of the corporation in terms of providing, I guess, municipal management of people? You see it in dog parks. So, even somebody shows up with a pit bull, right? Like there's an element of, is there an infrastructure that you see that's a responsibility for the company in order to maintain?
Yeah, that's a great question, and absolutely. I mean, we, in a sense, on the farm already have a code of conduct, if you will, and at each location, we've been calling the role house mother, if you will, but it's really somebody who's going to be on site on a continuous basis to make sure things. I mean, say enforce the rules, but really be there to facilitate more of like an open, accepting environment that, yeah, if somebody's causing a problem that goes against the policies that we have in place, that's a breach of the contract, and we'd have to deal with it. But for the most part, we try to vet that stuff up front as well, to make sure that anybody that we do bring into the farm and in the environment, that they've kind of checked those boxes initially. But we will have an on-site presence at each location, absolutely.
And Elizabeth, I've been running something that my youngest son calls Teeny Tiny Town. And we don't really kind of advertise it, but I started with Teeny Tiny Town 1, and Chris and Milan and Tina Ray, and I guess me as well a little bit, Teeny Tiny Town 2. You're absolutely right. In Teeny Tiny Town 1, there are occasional. It's not it's a small town, right? I mean, there's I think on my property there's 5 tiny homes and I think 8 workshops. And by the way, I'm planning to put a dog park there too because I got enough property for it. But on my property, maybe there's 15 or 20 people in this little town. It's a wonderful community. They decided, Elizabeth, to be a dry community. So when you go there on a picnic, there's no beer or wine. It's, juice or whatever. That was their decision, not mine. I had nothing to do with that. And they all really, really get along well. But there are occasional arguments. And when they argue, the house mother is actually my wife. And she is the project manager, and she's also the property manager, and she is the house mother. She's a wife, a mother, and a grandmother. She has 5 kids and 5 grandkids, and hopefully more grandkids to come. But she does have to intervene from time to time when there are disputes. And we've only ever really had one in the 5 or 6 years, maybe 7 years we've been doing this. We've had one significant dispute, and it was resolved. But you're right, it does happen. Well, this was really great. I super enjoyed it, and we did keep it to just under the hour, Chris. Thank you all very much for coming. Like I said, you'll get this on your email, and I hope to see you all and talk to you all real soon. Thanks again, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Bruce. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Chris.